Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my next episode of my podcast, Minecraft Peace. I'm your host, Katerina, and I have the pleasure of having Jason Johnson with me today as my guest. Hello, Jason.
Hi, Katerina. How
Okay.
are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's very early morning in America from where you're connecting. What's the time right now?
Yeah, I'm in Texas, so it's a little after 7 a.m.
Wow,
I think there's a 6 hour time difference between us.
you
Yep,
got up especially, and I really appreciate it. So thank you again for agreeing
absolutely.
to, spend probably about 45 minutes talking to you about matters that are very close to my heart and yours. And I'll start with introducing you so that people know who you are, a little bit about you. Um, so Jason is a senior leader in a large global food organization, and is looking after the his position actually is called the director. I have to look at my notes. Director for people and culture. Did I say that correctly, Jason?
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
company I work for is global. We have about 500,000 people around the world. I work for our North America division. In my scope of people, we have about 1,700. So I have responsibility over with 3 states supporting our division president, 3 states in the US, Texas, Colorado, Arizona. And so I help with training and development. Mostly it's a lot of coaching, coaching new managers to become better leaders. And like my tagline says, leading with kindness is also good for business. In the that kind of leading with kindness is good for humanity, but it does also yield very positive financial results. And so I've been on this journey to integrate heart-centered leadership into the corporate workplace. And so yeah, it's been exciting. It's been fun. I get challenged and have to work through some dynamics, and but yeah, people are receptive. People want to learn how to be better and how to show up better for their team. um, and it's about retaining folks, because there's
Mm.
we there's turnover. And so how do we create an environment so that people can work at their natural best,
Mm.
right? Yeah.
I love that. So a magical thing happened that your superiors, your bosses, noticed that your actually the areas that you look after are doing really well in all kinds of the metrics, retention being one of them, from what I understand. And you've touched upon the heart-centered leadership and leading with kindness. So I find that like this is the next step in evolution of the whole world, but the corporate world especially. So would you explain to us what is heart-centered leadership, what is leading with kindness?
Yeah, thanks. And so I've been in corporate America for about 24 years, and I've always worked on our operations team. I came into the organization as a frontline individual contributor, frontline provider, where I was interacting with the customer. And then because of having this servant philosophy of how can I help, I was able to go from working with a customer to leading teams, being promoted to leading offices, states. And over the years, my results have always been kind of in that top 10% in North
Mm.
America, from financial results, sales, revenue, profit, and then my retention, my people retention and customer retention has always been high. We do survey results, people surveys every year. And my survey results have been in the top percentile in the country. And I've had some senior leaders ask me, what do you attribute that to? And really it's the answer is heart-centered leadership. And then, well, what does that look like? And it's, caring for your people, supporting them, this servant style leadership philosophy, that is different than a lot of kind of normal corporate leadership mindset. And so, when you can align, the mind is a powerful thing. And I know that you talk a lot about, the name of this podcast, right, is Minecraft, right? And so, and I think when you can align your heart and your mind and kind of direct those energies, those intentions in a way that is kind and caring and compassionate, it's amazing how people respond to that environment. I mean, we know this as humans, but then when you get in the corporate space and you can provide that for your team, then their level of execution just elevates, and it's almost like this energetic level just rises as a team, and you start to perform better, and that's when you start hitting on your metrics even more than before. And so it's just been this leadership journey. Yeah. So a lot of people think that I work in the HR business. I have a lot of people that reach out to me in LinkedIn because of the title. But I don't. I work in operations, and and I focus on our managers, supporting the operations team, and how to develop and how they can support their teams better, to show up and perform the duties that we need to perform every day.
I love that. I listened to one of your podcasts, and I really liked what you said about you wanting to, or aiming for people wanting to come into work, be truly motivated, feel part of a genuine part of the team, and coming into work not just because they need to pay the bills. There's one aspect to that. We'll come to that. And I love that what you do, people kind of attach to HR, because what HR most of the time try and do is support managers to deliver actually what you're doing, but failing. And I think it comes down to the approach to the human being behind the digit, because we still, times are changing, but we still mostly, or the perspective of the business is mostly on the profit margins, and not really taking the human element into consideration, that we come in, like we've just spoken before we start recording, Debbie comes in as an employee, but she's also a mother. She's deals with stuff at home, and there's a lot that we, all of us, bring into work with us. So maybe you could expand on, or give us examples of how does your interaction with your team look like, and how does your support of the other managers look like?
Yeah, I think that, we get so focused on delivering on those metrics, especially when you work for a publicly traded company, right? You've got shareholders, you've got demands to meet, we make financial commitments. And there's a lot of pressure there, and it's not, those things are not bad. It's just, that's business, that's the world, right? And so I just kind of step back and look and go, how can it be better? And I think that we've all probably experienced waking up in the morning at some point in our lifetime and said, oh, I've got to go to work today. And so I try to create an environment where people wake up and go, I get to go to work today. Or I love my job, right? And like you mentioned earlier about Debbie, right? Just as an example, it's important to know that Debbie just doesn't work in accounting, or Debbie just doesn't work in the warehouse. She's not just an employee. She's a mother. She's a grandmother. She likes to go hiking. Maybe she's a a soccer fan or football in your world.
Mhm.
Um, and getting to know people on a human level builds connections. And the more we feel connected, then we start to feel like we belong to something bigger than ourselves. And when we feel like we belong to something, then that's when we want to be a part of it. And I think that
Mhm.
that's that, waking up in the morning and going, oh, I belong to something. These people that I work with recognize me as a human, as a mother,
Mhm.
as a grandmother, as a sports fanatic, as someone who likes to go hiking. Like, I connect with people. And so that's when you have connections, that's what draws you in. And the more we can, have this human element making the workplace more human, then it's just so much better for business, because you start to see a reduction in turnover. And our goal with employees or people is we want to make sure that they have the skills to do their job right. And so every job out there takes some level of skill, whether you're a plumber or whether you're a teacher or whether you're a carpenter, right? You learn these skills, and the more you do them, um, the better you get at performing those tasks. And being a manager is no different. The more you work on your leadership skills, because leading people is a part of the job. It's not just making sure the results finish,
Mhm.
it's taking care of the people that you're responsible for. And so I try to help folks. Well, I not try, I do. I help people
Mhm.
learn those skills, sharpen those skills, put those things into practice. And the more they practice them, the better they get. And then their people benefit from it. And then ultimately the company benefits from it because we're getting better. Yeah.
I like that. And the distinction that comes to my mind is what you also mentioned in your postcard between a manager and a leader. Um, would you like to maybe tell us what the
Yeah.
difference is to you?
Years ago, I used to think that those were two separate things. Like,
Mhm.
there's people who are managers and there's people who are leaders. And as I've developed in my own career, and as time has passed, I realized that they're equally important, because managers are responsible. So I do, I'm making this image here, and I think of it as like left brain, right brain.
Mhm.
Okay, so part of the brain is focused on speech, mathematics, calculations, logical stuff, and the other part of the brain is focused on creativity, emotions, feelings, those sorts of things. And I always like to put it in a perspective that if you were to get into an auto accident or some sort of injury and you had brain damage on either side of your brain, you're not going to be able to function fully as a unit, because those things are not independent. They work together. Like, every decision that we make, how we kind of move through the world, how we show up for people. And so they're equally important. And so when I think of leadership and management, equally important, we have to make sure that our processes are in place. We're focused on all the right things for our financial commitments. And we have to remember that we have a team of people that are getting us there and accomplishing these things. So it's continuously working together. It's not be a manager or be a leader. It's be both. And how do we hone in on those skills? How do we condition those muscles, to continuously work better together, more fluidly, as we go through our moments?
I love that.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
brings to mind I've just my mind has just gone blank. It will come to me in a moment. I think it was about no, it's not coming. It's not coming. Never mind. Oh yes, it has come. It's come back. So what you're describing, the way you work and the way you support other leaders, um, creating that genuine connection and building a sense of community, it's almost like that's what should be happening, but the most of the organizations do it the other way around. They come from the top down. They have meetings about values that are then kind of implemented, and kind of people are almost forced into them. But what you're doing is actually creating the human, well, tapping in and connecting with the human need for belonging, but true belonging, like you've just described, people coming to work being recognized for and accepted for who they are, and being supported every day. So yeah, it's just a little point. So I'm curious, how does someone who is in such a senior, corporate position, how does it happen that you bring this approach, this mindset and heart set into the world? So
Yeah.
who's the Jason behind the job
So,
title?
so just for the record, within our organization, I know that you use the term senior. And so when I think of senior leadership, I think of our C-suite folks that are responsible for, like, we have 13,000 employees in our company in North America. And my scope of focus is, 1,700.
Okay.
So I'm part of the senior team for our Southwest division. And so I just wanted to clarify that someday I hope that I can have influence over 13,000 people. But to answer your question, I think about connection and belonging, and I'm so passionate about what that means with people, and then working in corporate. How do we build that bridge? And I think, why am I so passionate about connection and belonging? And I think Aristotle has a quote where he says that if you, give me a child for the first 7 years of their life, I'll show you the man. Mm-hmm. And so there's some science behind what happens to us in our early years is what shapes us as who we are as adults and humans. And I think about my first 7 years of my life, and I'm the son of a military man. Mm-hmm. And I was born in Germany. In fact, it was called West Germany at the time, back in the 70s. And we moved.
You wouldn't be in the East. No, not from your side of the fence.
Yeah. So we moved a lot. I think by the time I was 6, we had moved 5 times. Mm-hmm. And so 2 countries, and then within North America, 3 different states. And so 5 times in the first 6 years of my life, I've always felt, I know that it's hard to really have consciousness in those early years of, recalling, but even after that, we moved a lot. And I've always felt disconnected. I've always felt like an outsider, like the new kid. And I have many memories of sitting and watching people play, being alone. And I, I always wanted to be part of that and be part of something. And so it wasn't until about the age of 12 when my parents got divorced, and I went to go live with my mom, and we moved to a different state. And I could actually realize that I'm not going to be moving anymore. And it was my middle school and high school and college all in the same place. And it was important for me to have a sense of connection, a sense of belonging. And I, strive to create these environments at those ages to bring people together. And it just kind of trickled into, I dropped out of college, so I didn't finish. I didn't get a degree. But when I went into the workplace, um, it was about connection and belonging and feeling connected to my customer, feeling connected to my coworkers. Um, yeah, and by the way, for the record, I was a good student.
Mm,
I didn't drop out because I always follow my heart. And
mm,
surprise, right?
mm,
And I was sitting in an accounting 200 class in college, and I had this overwhelming feeling come over me that just said, "You're not where you're supposed to be." And I left school. I don't think I went back the next day. Um,
wow.
yeah, and so then I spent some years as an artist, until I got into the workplace. I was carving stone, and you know my experience as an artist carving stone is similar to my role as a leader today. That when I looked at a rock, everything was already there. I was the facilitator. It was my job to remove all the other stuff and let whatever was in the stone become.
Mm,
And so in my current role, I see that similarity of the art of leadership is helping people, like our good friend Ryan Hartley says, you have all that you need.
mm,
And I think that is absolutely 100% true, that it's those layers that we have to chip away and get that exterior off to show the beauty inside of us and show up as our whole self, right? And
mm,
so that's what I try to help people, really, in the world. When I interact with folks, I want them to be their best self, their best version of
mm,
themselves. And you know I just happened to work for a company and was able to be in this position to kind of do that and get paid to do it, right, from a leadership
mm.
standpoint. Yeah.
Oh, it's powerful. I wonder whether you've always been able to do this, as in see the potential and the wholeness of people inside of them, or whether there's been a process. I'm just thinking about myself. I'm sure that just a few years ago, I would be a lot more judgmental. I would see flaws in people. I wouldn't be able to connect with the wholeness and the perfection that we're kind of born with. What was it like for you?
Yeah, so certainly that wasn't my perspective. It's hindsight, right? When I look back, I can certainly see the moments that were where the things that I'm saying now, when I look back, I can see how that showed up, but it wasn't my perspective then. It just
Mm-hmm.
was who I was, or who I am. My I've been very fortunate, even though my parents split up when I was 12. They both loved me. Of course, I had some issues with my dad leaving us, feeling this sense of abandonment again and the lack of connection. But when before the age of 12, um, my dad, very mindset driven,
Mm-hmm.
but he believed that all things were possible. Like, he was such a creative, um, an engineer type. He was always fixing things and making
Mm-hmm.
things and designing things, and he spent a lot of hours in his workshop. And so he taught me to believe that, if somebody else could do something, you can do it. And he taught me to believe that, he used to say, mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter.
Oh.
And I mean, he put this funny spin on it, but it really was, if you don't mind. Like, so when I think about that phrase, I think that our mind is what blocks us,
Mm,
right? That it has these worries, these doubts, that recalls memories of experiences in our past, and it kind of replays this loop for us.
mm,
And but my dad said, so if that doesn't mind, right, then it doesn't matter, and you can kind of just do.
mm,
And so that was the mindset piece. And then my mother, was probably the most unconditional person. We were so grateful. I was so grateful. One brother, so two siblings. My mother cared for us in a way that uh, in fact, she spent her whole life caring for people. And she really showed me what love is. She made tons of sacrifices for us as her children. Um, but she loved spontaneous, fun moments, and not just caring for us as a protector and a provider, um, but these, there was a lot of fun and love in that world. And so I take, what I've absorbed from both of my parents,
Mm.
and that's who I am. um, I am constantly thinking that, looking at things and approaching it a different way. And that's not recalling those moments as a kid. As a kid, I would look at something and go, okay, how can I do that differently? Or that didn't work, let me try it
Mm.
again. That didn't work, let me try it again. And my mom taught me to do it with care. And so, of course, there were moments that, I probably had some collateral damage along the way trying to go for something. I was always driven as a kid to succeed. And maybe the abandonment thing from my father after I was 12 years old, I can recall, feeling, hindsight again, not in the moment, but thinking about it now. I was driven to maybe because I felt like I wanted to prove I had value and I was worth it,
Mm.
because of that absence or that disconnection that happened with my father. Now, my dad and I have reconciled. I've moved beyond those moments. We have a wonderful relationship. But going through that, I think you asked me, what was my experience as a kid growing up and as a child, and that was the experience. Yeah, having those two parents, and one saying live in the moment and have joy in your life, and the other one
Mm.
saying think about how that you can continuously look at something many different ways, and until you either break it or fix it or or whatever.
It feels like the perfect combination of the mind, keeping an open mind about
Yeah,
possibilities, and just keep, keep trying, keep coming back to, do it differently. And the heart from your mom,
yeah,
the care and the joy that comes from the heart. So it feels like a perfect combination. And I didn't know that I think you mentioned it, but I didn't know that you were a sculptor. Is that a word? Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. It's because you talk about yourself as an artist at heart with an entrepreneurial mindset. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
right. And that brings me nicely to the next creation that you have started. So Jason has started working on a book, which is not going to be about the corporate world. It's going to be about something very different. Would you like to share with us what's it going to
yeah.
be?
Well, it's a blend. It's interesting. Earlier on you mentioned on one of my podcasts, and so um, during COVID, when the world shut down, uh, I felt like my creativity. I was always being creative at work.
Mm-hmm.
The heart of an artist with an entrepreneurial mindset, right? So I was constantly pushing the boundaries and trying to think of new ways to execute on our metrics and drive revenue. And when COVID shut us down, and really limited the things that we were doing, um, I had some anxiety, and my wife was like, you need to find a hobby. So a friend of mine said, you should start a podcast because everybody, learns from you. And when in a team environment, a friend that used to work for me. And so I did. And so I did that for about 18 months during the COVID time. I haven't really made an episode in about a year and a half. Um, but the reason I'm telling you this is because um, people keep telling me, you should write a book, you should write a book. And so
Okay.
you have these little signs and you hear things. So I started writing a book, and I I hope and it will get published in 2024. Um, but it's about my journey and my experiences in not so much as a memoir, but my corporate journey,
Mhm.
but with the kindness connections, highlighting those moments all throughout the last 24 years of my corporate journey.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so that's what the book's about. And so it's going to be about connection and belonging and influence and our energy and mindset and leadership manager combination, and so human elements, but how those show up in the real world of corporate
Mhm.
America.
Mhm.
Because I think that there's this bridge that needs to be built, because so often we you show up at corporate and you put on this corporate suit or mask or
Uniform.
the things that you need to do
Mm.
to operate and function in that space. And why can't just be you and show up and function and operate in that space?
Mm.
And I think when that happens, um it's pretty amazing.
Reminds me a
Yeah.
little bit of when you said the word bridge. The word bridge was popping up for me a lot last year when I realized that I want to get into schools with my work, because at the moment children spend so much time at schools, and they operate within this system, right, that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't allow for uniqueness, individuality, very conformist, result driven. In some ways it does, and there are some. If you want to be a little conspiratorial about it, you could say there's some people who want schools to be kind of operated and managed like corporations, but we're not going to go there. So that's really interesting, and it resonates with me in that when people talk about building a new world, like new earth is coming, what is it going to look like? It's not going to probably from the outside look, at least that's the way I see it, not look any different. It's just the transformation will happen for the people so that they then, yeah, their values and their, how would I put it? Their way of being will be very different and aligned with who they are, but it's going to happen within the corporate world and within the education system. Is Yeah, so that's fascinating for me. I see those parallels in the way you talked about it. Would you like to say
Yeah,
something?
I was gonna say, I was just reading Adam Grant's book, Hidden Potential, and he mentioned in, I think it's Finland, their school system at an early age, it's all about play
Mm.
and interaction. And then when you look at the American school system, I mean, we're trying to teach them, we're focusing, similar to corporate, right? So they're focusing on the metrics at earlier and earlier and earlier, reading, writing, math, all these things that we want them to excel at as a human. But man, how powerful it is for just play in those social interactions. Because one of the things that I talk about a lot is how important relationships are. That
Mm.
relationships, I mean, everything, right? So just as a perspective, I talk to leaders in our corporate business, and we're in a food service industry. And so I tell them, we are people who are responsible for people, who provide products, solutions, and services to people, right? The customer, our customer is made up of an office or a company that's made up of people. We are a bunch of people, and we're leading people. That when I think about what Adam Grant said in his book, in his research and his studies in Finland, that these young primary school kids at the earliest ages, they're just playing. And, there's craft time, there's outside time, there's, building forts, playing, whatever, climbing trees. I mean, I don't know, but playing. And then they give them all these different things so that a child can kind of gravitate towards whatever their liking is. And I think that's amazing. And we need to do more of that.
Yeah, it is. Finland is my kind of country when it comes to education. They don't get it, they don't get everything right, but certainly a massive inspiration. Is a great focus on, from what I know, on play, creativity, and lots of breaks, no homework, and virtually no testing. So when coming back to like comparing corporations and schools, it's like you look at the output, like what is it that the politicians look at as like, what's a good result? Yeah, so good result for schools is like, so here in the UK it's the GCSEs and A levels. So they look at the results, right? So they just take like a letter that's supposed to say how this young person is going to do in life, how well they're going to do in life, how happy they're going to be, how fulfilled they're going to be. It's impossible. And from my perspective, and one of the reasons I want to bring mindfulness and meditation the way I do it to schools is that there's so much that happens in school. We spend such a long time there, 6-7 hours. That's where you learn about the world. Relationships are huge. You navigate relationship with your peers. There's your kind of first experience with authority. How does that happen? Is it your like, my perspective is that oftentimes we're told to respect an adult as children just because they've been put in front of the class without having built any relationship or reason to respect this person. There's a lot I could go on, but definitely Finland.
I think that
then I'll need to come back to something else that I've just remembered. Go on.
I was going to say, I think that structure is important, but not for the sake of structure, but for the sake of what you're trying to accomplish. Right? So it's like, hey, we need to get in line. And it's not like at mealtime, if you line up in mealtime, then it's efficient to give out meals as the kids come through, right? But we don't get in line because you need to be in line and you need to stand here and wait your turn. It's just an efficient process so that we can give everybody something, instead of everybody just rushing into a table and it's like madness. So I think that we, back to something you said, is that, and I think you said this, and so, and I don't remember what words you used, but it's that we need, I don't know if you said hierarchy or status, but you said something about structure, and I forget. Authority. Yeah. That authority is important. It is important. But it's not for the sake of I'm in charge. It's for the responsibility of what authority is, to care for the environment and somebody or a team of people to kind of keep some sort of order in place, but not for the sake of order, for the sake of the environment, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
find that your example about the line or queue for lunches is a typical example of where you realize what a typical communication style looks like when, you know, the way children are being spoken to at school. So they're just kind of given instructions without having the context of why is it they're being asked to do certain things. So they would just be told to line up. Well, they don't, especially the little ones, they don't know it's because, you know, it really helped them to make the lunchtime, you know, run smoothly so that everyone kind of gets their turn. And yeah, it's just like, okay, someone comes up and starts ordering children a line, and you know, people may say, oh, you know, it would take too long to explain everything to children. I said, well, no, because it is another investment into the future. So this is, I try and communicate with my boys and my, you know, definitely my clients in that ways that I kind of set the scene and explain, and you know, then usually it's, there's not an issue. And then there's another point I wanted to say about, there's a wonderful um person, Dr. Peter Gray. I don't know if you know him. So he's um I think he's originally a biologist, but he's basically spent a lot of time with the indigenous peoples, various tribes around the world, studying them. And surprise, surprise, as humans, we learn social skills through play, because if you look at these communities, how they operated, children reenact and play out scenarios that they kind of observe, and that's how they learn. So play is not just for an outlet and you know, doing something during recess, you know, during break, is actually an important function to then grow into a healthy mature adult being. But we're robbing children of this time. This is like an just a bonus, like something a little bit extra, but we're actually doing ourselves you know, disservice, because we're actually depriving them of a possibility to learn social skills. And the fact we group them in groups of the same age, you're not going to learn from a child who's the same age. You need to be in a mixed age group so that you can learn from the older ones. And yeah, the dynamic of that is much healthier and a more of a like example of, you know, how we live, you know. Yeah, so anyway, so that was just like in addition to that.
Yeah, it promotes collaboration, communication, cooperation. I mean, those are three really important human skills.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to your book. Is there a core message kind of underlying what everything you're writing about?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, leading with kindness is also good for business. You know, I think that that's kind of the message that I speak most about, because, you know, again, we talk about building bridges, right? You can imagine a workplace where it was just kindness and you weren't focused on business. Like that business would go out of business very quickly. Everybody would be happy until the day that they were told they can't come to work anymore because there's no revenue coming in, right? We can't just play all the time, but play is important. And the point of the business is to generate revenue, and you know, it kind of filters down and it helps us provide for our families. And you know, because the world we live in, we don't live in you talked about the indigenous people, and I love that. I'm always fascinated by that tribal environment, because you trade, you work together, you feed, you clean, you wash, you build, you function as a unit. And But when you start to evolve, right, evolution, and you have highways and buildings and traffic lights and laws, and then you get the job duties have evolved too, right? It's not just one farmer growing some wheat and one farmer who maybe has some chickens and trading anymore. Like that farmer goes to the market and has all of their hay so that many people can come, because he doesn't have the time to trade with everybody. So then now there's this currency in place. And so when you fast forward that to 2023, as we go into 2024 here, it's commerce. It's the way the world works. And so corporations have to exist, companies have to exist. It's just a way of life. People are employed or providing services or products in trade for money, and then we can distribute that for people to have a way of a means to live. And so how do you connect those two is what the book is about. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story. Like 23 years ago, in my first year in corporate, I was an individual contributor, so I wasn't responsible for anybody. I was out driving a truck and visiting different businesses and providing them with coffee in their offices and coffee products. And my manager came to me one day and she said, Jason, your sales are down. You need to sell more stuff. And I'd only been on the job for a few months. And what I discovered in this new environment is that my customers weren't happy. So I started building relationships with them and showing up and saying things like, how can I help? What do you need? What can I provide for you? And so I was building these relationships because the person prior to me was just selling them stuff that they didn't need. And the customers were getting frustrated. And so my boss comes to me and she says, Jason, your sales are low. And I said, my customers just need love. And this was 23 years ago. And she was corporate focused, corporate minded, looking at the metrics, and my metrics weren't low or were down because I just started my job. I had to build relationships, right?
Exactly.
So the conversation is, Jason, your sales are down. You need to sell more stuff. And I said, my customers just need love right now. She looked at me like I had two heads. And and so if you want to talk about consistency in messaging, that's been my consistent message. Because when the customer does feel love, they feel connection, they feel a partnership, they honor, trust, respect the relationship with you, they'll buy a ton. Because by the way, a few months later, that same manager came to me and handed me a $2,000 gift card. And she goes, Jason, you won the national sales contest. And I said, what sales contest? I didn't know there was a contest. True story. I was so focused on building relationships, and my customers were like, oh, Jason cares for us. What else do you have on your truck? What other things do you offer? So I just started selling them things that they were asking for on the basis of a relationship and trust and partnership and being of service to them, that somehow I won a national sales contest.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of a story you shared on social media from a few years ago, that you went against other managers' decision and hired this person who didn't, whose English wasn't great, didn't know much about the industry, but you just felt that, he's the right, you went with your intuition and your gut in that this is the right person for the job. And that there was this, you witnessed this transformation of like an area where you used to get all these complaints all the time. And then all of a sudden, everything just improved to the point where they were like, saying thank you for sending us this person. I'm unfortunately I've forgotten his name, but yeah, it stuck
Yeah.
with me. And this is like, so you've just allowed him to do the same that you did by the sound of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hired him because of his values and his
Mm,
character, right? Character and values. And then we taught him the skills that he
yeah.
needed to do the job.
Mm,
Because he certainly was, from a skills level, he was the least qualified out of the
mm,
applicants.
mm,
But from a values and character standpoint, I mean, you could feel this guy's energy when he walked into the
mm,
room because he
mm,
was just amazingly present.
mhm.
And so I'm like, I've got to get this guy on my team. And everybody else was like, that's crazy. He doesn't know what he's doing. So
Mm,
we taught him what to do, and it really turned everything around in that area. Yeah, that was in Boulder, Colorado.
I love that.
Um,
And it makes me think of how companies try and train people in customer service. Like, what does that look like? Like, I think all they
yeah,
need is like you build relationship, you
yeah,
create connections.
and
Yeah.
the really cool thing here, Katerina, is that was about 12 years ago, and when I left Colorado and moved to Texas, I lost touch with those people. I left that
Mm.
organization, joined a new company, and that individual reached out to me 10 years later and said, I'm going to be traveling through. I'd love to stop and see you. So
Oh.
so that was really cool.
Mm.
And so he brought him and his wife and his three daughters were traveling through Dallas,
Mm.
and they stopped and we visited for 20-30 minutes. We had hugs and laughs, and yeah, it was very nice. Um,
Oh,
yeah.
this is true humanness. And we can't see your t-shirt, but I've got one
Yeah.
of your tops. Yeah,
Well,
that's your, yeah.
this is Jonathan Darling's t-shirt.
Ah, okay. Oh, I see. I
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Humankind. I've got
Yep.
Be Human from you, and there
Yeah.
was another one.
Yeah. Give
Something.
kindness.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Give kindness.
mm.
Yeah.
I feel we could be drawing to a close, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Start wrapping things up. So, mm, what's your vision for the corporate world?
Mm.
Think 10 years from now. Where is Jason, and what does your
Yeah.
organization look like in the corporate world?
Wow. Well, I'll tell you this. I tell people that my personal mission is that when I interact with another manager at work and I'm helping them with their leadership skills to care for their folks, right? And all the corporate metrics stuff goes up. But really, my mission, the thing that is near and dear to me the most, is that the person I'm working with, that I'm helping them self-discover, when they go home, that the people in their life get a better version of them.
Mm.
Like that's my goal, is that their spouse, their children, their neighbors, the people that they interact with get a better version of them. And then naturally at work, then all the benefits happen, from a metric standpoint. But yeah,
What a gift. Imagine a
that's my
world where
goal.
people will be coming home happy and not exhausted.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that
Yeah.
vision.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe in 5 years' time? No, too soon.
Yeah. We'll see what tomorrow looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's start with that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Jason, what a conversation we've had. Thank you
Yes.
so much for your time, for getting up super early for me
Yeah.
to feed your chickens first, I guess, or no? No?
Oh no, the sun's just come up,
Oh,
so
only just. Oh, yeah.
yeah.
So is there anything you'd like to leave us with before we finish? Any last pieces of wisdom? Anything you'd
Yeah.
like people to hear?
I think it's just give yourself some grace. Remember, when I get frustrated or I feel like I hit kind of this wall, or I have these moments where I feel set back, um, I think that it's always important to get a perspective of there's things that you can control and there's things that you can't control, right? And they overlap one another. In that middle section is influence. So the things that we can't control is everything else outside of us. Like I can only can control my thoughts, what I speak, what I do, how I feel, what I think. Like I can only control me, but I can influence those other things through kindness. And that's why on a lot of my posts and in the logo in the corner here, there's these ripple effects on the outside of the heart, and that's heart-centered leadership. It's giving, it's influencing, heart influence to your environment, to those around you. And in the same respect, the things that you can't control, they will influence you, right? It happens every day. Whether somebody cuts you off in traffic, that motion, that moment can influence you, right? You can get upset. But you don't know what's going on with other folks. And so you just have to remember that there's these two buckets, and then there's this area of influence, and stay centered, give yourself some grace, give other people some grace, and yeah, be kind.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our time together, Jason, and all the best. And maybe, in a few years' time, we'll have a conversation again when things will be different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me, Katerina.
No, my pleasure.
I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, bye for now, everyone. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.